It is. Now we good? Hey everybody, welcome. It's a brand new episode of The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Your host, as always, Johnny Torres, coming to you from the Bullhorn Communications bunker. Thank you again to our buddy Travis Horn for allowing us to share his digs here and all his cool stuff here in the background, which you'll see in a minute. As always, we're going to be talking about the news of the day, both locally, statewide, and national. We hope you join us. Meanwhile, make sure that you like, share, and comment on today's broadcast. Help us grow the show. And just want to give a quick shout out again to Congressman Gus Bilirakis for joining us last week. If you didn't catch that, we talked to him right up front in last week's episode. You can find that on Facebook and YouTube. And also don't forget to subscribe to the audio version of our podcast over on Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, and Audible. Yes, I know, the evil tech overlords, but hey, you play the... Oh man, I was going to use some sort of metaphor, but hey, those are the cards we've been dealt, and so we're going to work with them and see how far we can go. Anyhow, we have lots to talk about today, as you can see there on our topics. But first, let me go ahead over to the table and introduce to you a new face and an old face. Over here on the main table, right to my left, is Hector Gonzalez. What's up, buddy?
Not much. Glad to be here finally on the Yard Sign. Looking forward to talking about the important issues of the day. Yeah,
well, and Hector is someone who is just a staple of the show and always has been. And you have probably seen him in our comments section, and we just couldn't help but, of course, extend the invite, being that he's been such a useful and active part of the show. And so great to have you, buddy. Thank you so much for coming on. And the old face on the show today. Maybe it's just a little cold weather, maybe you just need
Wow, what are you talking about? Do I need to start using some Botox?
I know, dude, you get like another week or two to wear your scarves.
It was surprisingly cold this week. I was very surprised.
Yeah.
But it's Florida, so in the morning it's chilly enough to wear one of these,
right? And
then in the afternoon you're sweating,
and you're wearing it like a sarong, basically, too.
Well, Jonathan, trying to lose some weight here, so any way to burn a few more calories, I'll definitely do it.
Yeah. Well, again, let's go ahead and look at today's topics because there's certainly plenty to talk about. Most of them, of course, centered around President Biden. And so we, of course, are going to be talking about the Russia and China tension. Biden again, somebody said that basically Biden is trying to govern as if it were opposite day. He's basically trying to do everything opposite of Trump, which is not a good governing strategy, but that seems to be. And so he's picking fights with Putin and Xi and not doing too well at doing that. So we'll pick that apart. Anibal Zadok, he's going to talk about fruit or pineapples or something.
Don't ruin it.
So we'll see. We'll find out what that's all about. And then also Biden taking a fall, and we mean that literally and figuratively. Really? So we'll talk about Biden a little bit more there. Anti-Asian hate crimes. We're seeing a rash of these throughout the country. But the underlying narrative may not be what you think. And so we'll pick apart what's happening to our friends in the Asian community. And then chaos in Miami, or crisis in Miami, as if the illegal immigration situation down there wasn't enough. That's not what we're talking about tonight. We are talking about quite literal chaos that is going on down there. And one of the cons of being one of the few states that is open for business during spring break. So, guys, let's go ahead and kick things off. Hi, by the way, to Justin, Kimberly, and Mrs. Stewart watching. We love you guys for watching.
Hi, Mom.
Russia, China. I mean, obviously, we're seeing now the beginnings of a very stark contrast in diplomacy. Something that I think people thought that Trump wasn't going to be very good at, but amazingly enough, it was very passive, a very quiet 4 years.
Yes.
For the most part, when it came to dealing with other countries and foreign diplomats, and obviously, a lot of controversy around Trump's relationship with Russia. and a lot of criticism saying that maybe he didn't push too much or enough against China, or China, as he would say.
China.
What's Biden's deal here? I mean, is he literally just trying to pick a fight from nothing? Is he? Is there something he's trying to accomplish? Something he's trying to prove? I mean, it seems to me like he's just trying to distract from all the other horrible things that he's dropping the ball on.
I honestly think that going back to what you said about opposite day, it's honestly Biden trying to be the opposite of Donald Trump when it comes to foreign policy, at least from a public image point of view. As you said, Biden is kind of rattling some sabers there, especially with China, with this fiasco of a summit that just occurred in Alaska, where the only productivity in general was the sanctioning of a few Chinese officials based on the fact that the Chinese are engaged in genocidal practices against the Uyghurs of northwestern China. So I just think that it's all just going back to what you were saying, Johnny, about Biden trying to be the opposite of Trump. It's opposite day in the White House every day. So it's kind of like a groundhog opposite day.
Yeah, and I think it's you're seeing what happens when someone gets into the White House and the administration has been so anti-Trump. Well, now that they've been so anti-Trump, they have to go everything against what Trump wanted to do. So that was a pretty decent policy when it comes to Russia, decent policies when it came to North Korea, China, even the Mexico border, and we'll talk about that later. But this kind of rash behavior has been something that's been very difficult. Again, you can't be such a weak vice president. You're not going to be a strong president because everyone already knows you're only here for 4 years. So every leader who has been in office as long as you have been is going to treat you as a joke.
Not just that, also as well, remember Joe Biden said that he wants to get back into the JCPOA with Iran. And that is not a good move because you have to understand with the Iranian nuclear situation that the nuclear weapon is just a means to achieve a strategic foreign policy objective or the strategic foreign policy objective for the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is a destruction of Israel.
And do we really want to get back into the Middle East?
Well, no. Absolutely
Americans
not.
have no appetite anymore for the Middle East after what, 17, 18 years?
We've been in, so I'm actually a vet of the war in Afghanistan. I was there from 2010, 2011. And when I got there in July of 2010, we were there almost 9 years because September 11th of 2001 occurred, obviously. The campaign in Afghanistan, which began as Operation Enduring Freedom, then became Resolute Support Mission now. That campaign began in October of 2001. So in October of this year, guys, we'll be in Afghanistan 20 years. We've been this war's been going on longer than Vietnam. It went on longer than World War II. It went way longer than our involvement in World War I. This is the longest campaign that the United States military has ever embarked on in its history. So we've been there. So the thing is, we can't resolve the problem, the issues present in the Middle East and Central Asia when these issues have been going on for thousands of years.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, really, what do we have to show for it, right? I mean, you can point
$100 billion budget
deficit. $100 billion budget deficit and a very unstable government in Afghanistan that if we leave, I do honestly believe that the president of Afghanistan will have to flee for his life.
He'll get assassinated before
or he will be killed in Kabul.
I'll say this. Right. I think Hector and I were probably the only two Americans that were actually watching or reading the live conversations in Alaska for the international discussions between China and the United States. And it was like we walked in with a paper mache knife and they walked in with a shotgun. It was so disproportionately aggressiveness. It was pretty funny and embarrassing as an American to watch the Chinese walk in completely ready to take us out.
I would say that because if you look at the history or the more recent history of American foreign policy, things like the Reykjavik negotiations that Reagan had with Gorbachev on nuclear weapons.
Which were phenomenal. I
Which
think they were phenomenal.
But the one previous to that, there was some antagonism between the United States and the Soviet Union, but nothing like what just happened here in Alaska.
No.
Absolutely not. We weren't publicly placing sanctions on Soviet officials for, I don't know, let's theoretically conducting a genocide against the Kazakhs, for
Correct.
example. This case, this is, as I said, this is the only proof of productivity in a general sense of what this summit produced was just, okay, we're just going to sanction these people, further antagonizing the People's Republic of China.
Well, and so the bigger picture here is, because typically it's tied to something, right? You know, obviously there's been some pushback on behalf of China because, you know, we've seen the repatriation of a lot of money, a lot of jobs, a lot of, you know, and then of course COVID. I mean, I think it's nothing that any company is going to come right out and say, right? But I think, you know, I mean, I don't know at what point does that straw break the camel's back, you know, but it's just been too long that we've allowed China to get away with things, you know, and to me, COVID is just the worst of it, you know, but we've seen the lead in the toys. We've seen, you know, just the drywall issue that they had, you know, just about 10 years ago, you know, in the housing industry.
And it's not just that, it's geopolitical as well. I'm currently working on a master's online with the University of Oklahoma in global affairs, and a good chunk of my study has been on China, and turns out that I had to do a paper on the Chinese global presence. There's a base in the African country of Djibouti that we use, that we're renting from the French, called Camp Lemonnier. Within sight distance of this base is a new Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy base,
which is the first one outside of
Asia, basically outside of Chinese soil. So
they just build this like in the middle of the ocean. And
no, it's a shore base.
Okay.
It's a naval base.
It's a naval base,
Right.
and they built this in Djibouti, right within sight distance of Camp Lemonnier. The Belt and Road Initiative as well, it's another point of contention between the United States and China, because although the Chinese are right now saying that the Belt and Road Initiative is only focused on development of economic infrastructure, that infrastructure could also serve a dual military purpose.
Yeah, it's a carrot and stick situation.
Exactly.
They are funding these programs ahead of time to show some form of diplomatic, economic diplomacy, when really it's just causing these countries to default on the debt that they're put in. They're not getting new jobs.
Right,
All these programs are being created and the infrastructure is being built by Chinese workers. So local workers don't even get the benefit of having a job.
Or it's a minimal participation by local nationals.
Well, we're seeing this happen, especially in Latin America as well, where a lot of the countries are in dire financial situations, and the Chinese is coming in, building infrastructure projects. Now they have a presence within the country. Meanwhile, I mean, we know, because they're even doing it to us, there's the theft of intellectual property.
Correct. Absolutely.
There's of course the hacking of a lot of personal information and a lot of government secrets.
But it'll never change. And even, I mean, Sri Lanka is a perfect example of how they had to default on their loan to the Chinese government, and they had to give up the seaport that was just created for them, that the Chinese paid for. And you're seeing that in Greece and other countries where the countries of default on the loan that the Chinese people wrote, and so they get to keep the infrastructure that the Chinese get. And this, I'll say this to end this conversation really, is that you can see, even though we're saber rattling now with big words and we're talking to them about sanctions, really who is the individual that they're hiring to run these trade negotiations? And so Catherine Tai, what is the current top trade negotiator, and she has never run a bureaucracy as large as the Trade Federation for the United States. She's a lawyer that sues the WTO.
Yeah.
WTO, when other countries are not following the rules.
Or better said, she brings suits to the World Trade Organization against other countries on behalf of the government of the United States.
So we're gonna sue China because China really cares if we sue them or not. This is just, it shows weakness all around. We're just showing more weakness. Biden calling the President Putin a killer is just being stupid. And so people get upset that Trump was being so chummy with these world leaders. Well, yeah, they're world leader. We're gonna go to war with these people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the point that I was making during the Trump administration. It's either we try to present good faith to these adversaries, because that's what they are, just straight up adversaries, or we could end up with countries that are also armed with nuclear weapons, and I think the choice is starkly clear.
I think the Biden administration, once again, I wouldn't be surprised if we get into another war because of the administration.
Oh, absolutely.
How many administrations has it been since someone didn't start a war?
Well, prior to the Trump administration.
None.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
It'd been
Carter, and even he had the
Carter
Iranian,
had
the Iranian
Operation
cover.
Eagle Claw that
Yeah.
became that was just a disaster.
Again, for all the faults that people talk about Trump is the only president in probably modern history that has not started a war outside on foreign soil.
Or conducted operations that weren't connected to operations that occurred before.
One of the few presidents that tried to completely end the Afghanistan war, try to get us all the way out, and then the military lies about how many troops are in Afghanistan.
They bluffed they undercut the actual number by 1,000. So,
Well, somehow, I believe that this all somehow leads to Aníbal's attic. He's going to teach us a little something about something called pineapple democracy, and I have a feeling it has nothing to do with SpongeBob SquarePants.
I don't watch television like that. So. I watch NPR all day long.
That's the devil's programming.
Well, thank you, Jonathan Torres. It has been quite difficult to find positive international news lately, with corona cases increasing in Europe and South America, the continued military occupation of Myanmar, and the unjust jailing of Aung San Suu Kyi and Alexis Navalny in Russia. Shit has literally been hitting the fan all around the globe, as Jonathan tries to gently get around the camera. It's fine, we didn't see it. It took me a while to find some form of international news that was a little peppy, and that is where we get into the small island off the coast of China. Earlier this year, China banned all imports of pineapples coming from the country of Taiwan. The CCP actions have been seen as a shot across the bow when it comes to the increased tensions between Beijing and Taipei. But like any good middle child, the Taiwanese government decided to create a hashtag to be able to push back on Chinese aggression. Hashtag Freedom Pineapple has been created by the government as a diplomatic and economic way to combat the aggression from the Chinese People's Republic of China. With the campaign in full swing, nations and companies from around the world have started to literally purchase the mountain of pineapples that are being stored in Taiwan. Lost my place. Countries like Japan, Australia, even Canada have started to purchase the excess supply of pineapples, which has led to a cornucopia of culinary creations. Creations like pineapple sushi, burgers, cakes, ice cream, and even Italy jumping in on it with their social media in their embassy, creating the inappropriate pineapple on pizza.
Ew.
I mean, if it's
Italy should burn for that
I
one.
know. I think they're already burning, honestly.
if done right, a pineapple Hawaiian style pizza is pretty good.
I feel that you are wrong.
Yeah.
At the very least, it's un-American.
Very least. All of this has resulted in the complete failure from the CCP to cause economic damage of the Taiwanese farmers. A collective international pushback against the regional bully is a perfect example of how not to mess with a fruit that represents welcome, celebration, and the ultimate symbol of Southern hospitality. Hashtag Freedom Pineapple. And back to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, well, this is the part of the show where I tell you to tell Hector how awful pineapple on pizza is by letting us know in the comments, pineapple on pizza, yes or no. Anyway, thank you for watching The Yard Sign, most important and relevant political podcast in politics. And, the session is underway. A shout out to all of our friends who are up there working hard in the state legislature. Congratulations to Joe Gruters on his new artwork.
I'm loving it. It's very Marie Antoinette, honestly.
My Lord, is that, I mean, he literally plastered an entire wall. You got to see it. Look up Joe Gruters on Twitter. But hey, man, you know, he's learned a thing or two from Trump in terms of showmanship, I think. Yeah.
I think it's a good social media connection. You go to the Capitol building, there's a place where you can take a picture. It looks really cool. Again, the blue seems very royal, like Marie Antoinette blue kind of.
Yeah, I like that dark blue.
I like it's a very nice contrast. I'm not gonna dig it. I'm not gonna say no, but I wouldn't be surprised if our inside information, Victoria, had anything to do with it.
It's very millennial too, because it's like one of those things where you like nowadays have to take a picture with it, you know, just to prove that you were there.
Yeah.
So I think in that regard, it's going to be very effective. Again, thank you so much. Make sure that if you're watching tonight's show to like, share, comment on the show. We appreciate you. And again, remember to subscribe to the audio version of our podcast, which I think we may have more people listening to the show, I think, than watching the show, which is pretty amazing. So thanks to everybody checking out the audio version of the show on Apple, Audible. Wait, hold on.
Wow. You got to get it right.
Yeah, I know. Got to get it right with the tech overlords. Google, Apple, Amazon, Audible, Spotify, and Audible? No, I don't know. All right, close enough. I know, I'm off. And speaking of being off, you know, this is one of those things where, unfortunately, my lack of preparation for today's show hinders the overall quality, because we could have certainly brought you some hilarious memes, videos of Biden falling down the stairs. I don't think we've had a good spill, you know, like kind of a
Gerald
like
Ford.
No,
that was bad.
HW had a thing.
Yeah, when he vomited on the lap of
threw
the Japanese prime minister.
That's right. Yeah.
No, really, it was.
And then I don't think W
Which is
had anything
actually.
like that. Oh yes, he did. He had just given a speech, and then he went to exit to his right, and that door was locked, and he was not able to get out of the room, and so then he had to kind of go back the other way.
Was it Obama that fell on a bike on a trail, or was that also Biden?
I think that was W that fell on a bike too.
He's the mountain biker. I mean,
yeah. W's the mountain
Got to remember,
biker.
Obama was the biker in the mom jeans.
Yes,
you know?
yes, I do remember.
That was
those.
the famous mom jeans.
I don't even think
remember
Joe
the
Biden's allowed to ride a bicycle. So
Oh God, no! I mean, you know, I'm surprised they let him walk up the stairs by himself.
he does have a sweet '63 Corvette.
I will.
convertible.
Yeah, that is very when he wants to be popular.
Yeah.
I will agree that the internet always wins.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's called, but it's that machine that you put on top of the rail that like you sit in and it brings you up.
Right.
Those are hilarious. I'm loving
saw
it.
that.
And then, so the way my mom was asking what were we talking about, because she saw it on the news.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I find the video where President Trump is playing golf. And every time he hits a golf ball, it hits Biden in the back of the head.
Right. That was my favorite one. That one I saw pretty early on, and that was pretty genius.
But how dare us talk negatively and use this as a way of discussing these matters of his inability to walk upstairs?
Well, Ronald Jackson, who was the White House physician.
He's now a congressman from the state of Texas.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. He came out pretty boldly saying that, hey, like, watching him, like there's no reason why the media shouldn't be asking about the declining health of the president,
Absolutely
because you know, again, he was involved with the Trump administration. I think he was even involved in the Obama administration.
I think so, but
like
I
the
know
tail
that he
end.
was the chief doctor of the White House. You know, he was
or maybe it had been a previous administration. Maybe
either
but-
W. I'm thinking
Yeah,
W.
but you know, he's saying that they definitely need to be looking into Biden's health. Again, you know, there's
But
a reason why.
watch the mainstream media's
No,
news
well,
saying
it's been 2 months.
this is a politically charged day.
we're only 2 months in.
Yeah.
Well, but they haven't put in, and they won't let him talk to the press.
It's been
like by
it's been
himself.
60 days now
Yeah,
since he's talked to the
yeah.
press.
And he is now the president to go the longest without doing some sort of press briefing.
But with the mainstream media, you got to understand they prop this guy up to where he's at. They're not gonna say, "Oh, he hasn't really." They mention it passingly, but they're not making a big deal out of it, saying, "Oh, he hasn't talked to the public in 60 days."
Yeah.
Because they were in cahoots with Biden since, you know, and I made a point about this during the last election cycle. that they were in cahoots with Joe Biden since Super Tuesday. There's a documentary on Vice that if you can find it, I recommend you find it. It's about how basically the mainstream media, spearheaded by NBC in this case, set up the conditions in the press to have Biden beat Bernie Sanders on Super Tuesday. It's called I forgot what it was, Bernie betrayal, something like that.
Right.
Where it's,
well, we saw there plenty of times where they were intentionally leaving out some of these other candidates that were rising in popularity
absolutely.
out of on-screen graphics
Yang
and polls.
was constantly removed from polls. He was constantly removed from he was always left out. Him and Tulsi Gabbard was always left out. And the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is that Biden didn't win the Democratic primaries. I mean, Biden
he was just basically
North and South the Carolinas. He shouldn't have won those.
No.
That was definitely for
Bernie.
Bernie. And you saw what happened. How Bernie supporters could have voted for Biden. You're getting what you asked for.
Absolutely.
Trump coughs or sneezes or does running on sentences on Twitter, and they're asking for his mental awareness.
Well, that was the thing. I mean, he had that one moment where he thought he was going to slip down that ramp.
Yep.
You know, and all of a sudden, I mean, heck, they were starting to dig his grave already because they were like, "Oh, his mental health is declining, his physical health is declining."
The 25th Amendment.
Right.
Yeah.
This guy trips up the stairs twice.
Three times.
Oh, 3 times. You know, and then heaven forbid if you question the fact that he can't even remember that he's the president because he continues to call Kamala Harris President Harris.
Again, I'm loving all of this and the hypocrisy, how it looks and the media, and I'm gonna call BS on it. At the end of the day, they're being super hypocritical. People are getting fired at the White House for the consumption of marijuana when the vice president herself said that she used marijuana at one time.
The progressive wing of the Democratic Party is calling for legalization of marijuana, if not all drugs.
The 44th president of the United States was a habitual marijuana smoker.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, so I don't know what they're trying to get across with that, or if maybe that was just a way to get rid of some people that they need to get rid of, you know. But what's the message that's being sent there, especially when we're seeing the legalization of marijuana happen all across the country, to the fact that even Republicans here in Florida are now pushing for it.
I mean, I'm sure it's basically the libertarian wing of the party.
The more centrist, the more moderate Republicans. You know,
at the end of the day, I mean, Colorado has really shown. Again, this is the reason why we have 50 states. This is the reason why we're able to pick and choose what states can do what. At the end of the day, I like the idea of what Colorado has done when it comes to their sin taxes. That's what they call it. They call it a sin tax, and it really much understands like this is why we're taxing it. We're going to let it happen, but we're going to tax the shit out of it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised.
Oregon now just went a couple steps further ahead than Colorado by legalizing personal use amounts of any illegal substance on the federal code.
Let's also calm down with using Oregon as an example.
For anything.
Half of Portland is still on fire, but no one's talking about it. And the federal building has been attacked almost every single weekend during the week, because God knows those rioters don't have jobs. So we'll see what happens. But God forbid someone has a party here in Tampa.
Well, and again, you know, so now talking about Biden kind of falling into other issues. Of course, the one that is just snowballing on him right now is the crisis at the border, especially since today Project Veritas, and shout outs to everybody who sent me links and pictures and stuff like that.
My man Carrie Porch.
Right. You know, there were pictures that came out of the people that are being detained at these migrant centers. And honestly, if it weren't because there was a few where I could see like sneakers and pants and stuff, I mean, it almost looked like a box of like baked potatoes. You know, because they're all wearing like those silver like blankets.
The European style like warming foil blankets.
Right. And I mean, they barely fit on the floor. I mean, there's literally almost nowhere to walk among them. Now we're hearing that Biden's going to spend about $86 million in hotel contracts to put these people up in hotels. This thing I think is only going to get worse before it gets any better.
And I think what's being missed about this issue at the border, in my opinion, is that there are, Biden is not a woke progressive Democrat by any means.
No.
He is a centrist, corporatist. Basically, he's trying to run a third Obama administration without Barack Obama being the United States.
Correct.
Yeah,
President
but
of the
see,
United
I've
States.
said this before, which is I don't even believe that Biden's a moderate. If you look at his history from beginning to end to now, he has always gone with the most vocal, most vocal, most progressive wing,
The
of
most in vogue wing
yeah,
of the party.
whoever's the most popular,
Yeah.
right, and which right now is the progressive wing within the Democrats, and so I don't think he really has a spine in that sense, to say, well, he's a blue collar Democrat,
or
he's
he's
a
serving
centrist
corporate
or a moderate
interest. Because in my opinion, if you look at a few years ago, I want to say about 2 to 3 years ago, if any of you guys can recollect my memory, when they did a raid on a chicken processing plant in Mississippi, most of the workers there were of the same origin as these individuals coming into the United States right now,
Sure.
which were here present illegally in the United States. They came in clandestinely. So for me, and it might sound a little conspiratorial, but it's just noticing the economic dynamics within the United States. These are the people that are doing the jobs that the vast majority of Americans just won't do.
Sure.
Which are working in meat processing, landscaping, hotel upkeep, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So I think that these people,
Housekeeping,
that
janitorial services.
there are powerful moneyed interests benefiting from these people fleeing just an absolutely chaotic situation in Central America. There was a mini doc, lasted about 20 minutes, that I watched from New York Times about these teenagers from Honduras that were trying to make it to the United States. And when I saw the conditions of what's going on in Honduras right now, we are looking at something akin to an Afghanistan, Somalia, Liberia. We are watching possibly the beginnings of failed states in these countries.
Right.
And this is going to loop back around to what we started talking about on China. My thing is this: either we not necessarily take lead in resolving these issues, but be the big outside stakeholder in this, or the Chinese will be resolving it to our detriment.
I don't think the Chinese will be resolving it. I think China is very much happy with the chaos that's happening on the southern border. It allows them to focus on other things. I think what's occurring, and again, as a Latin person that has been to the border, that has been with ministries that have helped people dealing with that has seen the literal coyotes shivering people around, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And to hear the Democrats try to talk about how they have the moral superiority when it comes to this, you're causing more of the problem. The fact that the Biden administration removed the three main policy, which was you have to submit documentations at the country or the first country that you go into. So if you're coming from Honduras, it's the next country north of it.
Yeah, Guatemala.
And so you have to go through there. You have to go through one of the checkpoints, and you have to wait in the country that you're in before you get asylum seeking. And again, 90% of the people that go requesting do not get asylum because it doesn't meet the criteria.
Asylum is a very because before I worked with the clerk of court here in Hillsborough County, I worked with Lutheran Services of Florida doing what they call family-based immigration, dealing with mostly Cuban entrants, some Haitian entrants, refugees and asylees.
Venezuelans.
Yeah.
I had one client that was a Honduran female minor, and just the standard, and I learned this from the guy that hired me, a gentleman by the name of Javier Torres, who I have eternal appreciation because he was the first guy who gave me a job after I got out of the Army. And after he left Lutherans and started his own nonprofit here on Howard Avenue, I went up to his office and he showed me just the extent, depth, and scope of applying for asylum. Guys, the application's about this thick, no lie.
And it's because we're getting applications from around the world, from like people that are running from political asylum, that are asking for war torn. So again, I think the bigger conversation is And I agreed with the Republican position. You secure the border. Kim Davis is talking about how there are specific places on the border that are left open so that migrant workers are able to go back and forth, which defeats the purpose completely when it comes to this.
No, we do have, and the problem is which again, Trump had the right approach, and I think Republicans have the right approach, which is that you have to be able to control the border before you can reform immigration.
Correct.
And having worked for Senator Rubio, I can tell you firsthand that the businesses and industries that depend on legal migrant workers, because you can't hire migrant workers legally, that whole wing of immigration has to be reformed because it's currently not even meeting the needs of the employers that actually benefit from it and are willing to make the investment.
Correct.
I mean, there's a huge investment that people don't realize because from the minute that you decide that you want to hire somebody, let's say that's in Mexico, because again, that's the closest point of entry, they have to cover the expenses of that individual from the moment they cross into the United States through the entire time that they work for them and then all the way back. And so it's a huge investment on their part. And the reason I bring that up is because I also want Republicans to understand that this is a problem. Like there is a need and a role for these individuals to come into this country and work. And trust me that if Americans were willing to do that type of work, these companies would be more than happy to hire them. The problem is for instance, one of the largest landscaping companies here in Tampa Bay, would tell me, look, we've offered $20, $30 an hour. We can't find people that want to do this type of work. And so they have to take advantage of these migrant worker programs. And it's a lottery, and it's a very shallow lottery.
Yes.
And depending on how many people you're able to hire is going to affect your revenue at the end of the year because it's going to determine how much money you're able to make.
Florida is a perfect example that it's agriculture, it's
tourism.
There's a lot of aspects that go from there. And the reason why I'm so adamant about stopping the illegal immigration flow is because those individuals that come into this country that are working underneath the table are not getting paid correctly, are not being treated correctly, are being taken advantage, are being trafficked. All of that stuff is happening because the Democrats don't want to get involved with the immigration policy. We were close during the Trump administration to get some form of correction when it came to that, and they wouldn't budge at all because they don't believe in building a wall. Again, we didn't have this crisis 4 months ago. How on earth are you saying that this isn't a Biden crisis when the migrants that are trying to come over the wall have T-shirts that say Biden, let me in?
Right.
Absolutely.
What on earth are you doing or are you thinking? That's the same thing that happened.
And who's paying for those shirts?
Exactly. Again, this just shows, 76% of Americans that were polled recently by The Hill say that this is definitely a crisis. And the fact that the government is not talking about it as a crisis is starting to upset people. Because again, we did not have this problem when Trump was in office. Now we have a huge problem.
The question here
But people also, sorry, really quickly, but people forget that there was a crisis at the border at the end of the Obama administration that they refused to also acknowledge.
Yes.
And they wanted to claim was non-existent. They wanted to claim that these caravans that were coming through all of Central America were non-existent.
But what is the political desired end state of allowing this situation to just keep on happening without any resolution? What is the Democratic Party trying to gain out of this?
I think they're gonna again never let a crisis go to waste. Thank you, Rahm Emanuel. They're going to say, hey, we can't control this any longer. We're going to have to give asylum to 10, 15, 20 million of these people that are here.
That will blow up the border system. That will blow up the border
system. This is going to give them a reason to force amnesty through, which is, I think, what they wanted to do anyways.
But we've already seen,
they want this to boil over.
But we've seen this story already happen once before. Reagan
was the one
Reagan created the amnesty program for 20 million or 10 to 15 million illegal immigrants that were in this country. And we're back at the same problem 20 years later. And so we're not going to solve this problem the way they want to solve it. The fact that they were willing to pay for hotel rooms, the fact that they're willing to fly them to the Canadian border so they can be processed in the Canadian facilities, just shows you how unwilling they are to take this. Because they're not willing to get hotel rooms for the National Guard to be sleeping when are they still protecting the Capitol building? I don't even want to get there right now. What I'm saying is they're willing to spend the money on migrant workers, or migrants, but they're not willing to spend it on American soldiers. That tells you the priorities for the Democratic Party. I don't see how on earth can you be a Democrat and say that you have the moral ground on immigration when you are allowing children to be put in cages. The whole time you were giving Trump grief when you're using photos of the Trump and the Clinton administration and their facilities. But then when it happens to the Biden, oh, no one can hear anything whatsoever. They're not even pushing Biden to do a press conference.
Yeah. Well, and one or the other to kind of
start
to transition into the next topic, but I think is also somewhat related, is the fact that when it comes to these anti-Asian hate crimes that have been happening, and I hate using the word hate crimes, but let's just go ahead with that vernacular for now. This is also something that's gone largely ignored right now in the country. It's only just now starting to get some attention, but this has been going on for months. Now, the part that irks me is that they want to continue to blame the Trump administration, okay? But what doesn't feed that narrative, and the reason that hasn't really caught on and doesn't support that narrative, is because it's happening in these liberal strongholds. Where are these anti-Asian crimes happening? They're happening in New York City. They're happening in San Francisco, okay, where again, they have large Asian populations, Houston, Texas, okay?
Atlanta.
Why are they happening in these very liberal cities, okay? And of course, they want to point to Trump and trying to say that, oh, well, he called it the Chinese virus and the China virus and and he made it about Asian Americans. But we're obviously months removed from that. There was very little of this happening during the Trump administration. And so, yes, by all means, let's bring attention to this issue. But let's also try to figure out why this is happening, because that's the one thing that nobody has truly been able to pinpoint. Is this retaliation over people that have been locked up in these cities for way too long, that are going through a lot of stressful situations because they can't work, they can't live? Or is there something bigger here that's being missed?
I think it's, unfortunately, it is a situation in which it is, sadly racially motivated. There are people, as you, Johnny, said, these are people that are dealing with, these incredibly weird, stressful situations of basically kind of being treated like they're on probation, where they can just basically go to work if they're allowed to go to work and home, and that's it. There's no entertainment. There's no dining out. You couldn't even go to, I think the libraries still here in Hillsborough County are closed. But yeah, I think it is unfortunately a rash of anti-Asian violence, because.
But is it related to the virus? That's the big question. I mean,
I think
that seems like the obvious
the virus
answer,
but the virus is the face of this sentiment, but I think it's also just the fact that people are scared about China being the next superpower, that the Chinese are trying to take over the world. It's just a lot of.
I'll push back a little. I would actually tell you now, please research if we had an increase in Asian hate crimes during the rise of the Japanese during the late 80s and 90s, to see if it was correlated to that, because that was a time when people thought that Japan was going to take over the world as well. I will say I wouldn't be surprised if there's a percentage of it that people are afraid and are contributing to the Wuhan virus, coronavirus, and everything else. We didn't see it during SARS or the bird flu or any of the other ones. I think there's just a lot more tension on the ground because people are cooped up. I'll also say this: one of the biggest populations that do not report hate crimes among themselves are the Asian community. Right. They're very much underreported because a lot of them do not report crimes to the police. That's something that happens a lot. There's also a lot of racial tension between the African American community and the Asian community.
Look at what happened in LA.
The LA riots, yeah. So Koreans and the Black community. So I think a lot of that is just people are frustrated. Mm-hmm. People are upset. People are desperate. So a lot of the attacks in the beginning were on elderly Asian men and women, more women than men actually. Yeah. And now the increase is more with women. Do I think what happened in Atlanta was a hate crime? Not really, because you read the report after you read the headline, and it talks about how he was there were other people that were shot, not just Asians. Do I think you're going to have to talk to him Was he killed? I don't remember.
No, he's in a Georgia jail right now.
So I think it was more or less that he was shooting because they said he
Yeah,
had
but
a
this
sex,
is the
he was
thing.
sex addict.
This is what bothers me about this issue is that they basically waited for a crazy white guy
Yeah.
to go and shoot a bunch of people to make a national issue out of it. This has been happening again in New York. This has been happening in San Francisco, and honestly, a lot of it has been minority on minority crimes.
Yes.
And so it has been minorities attacking Asians. Okay, and of course that doesn't fit the narrative. That doesn't fit the America is racist narrative, and so they're not going to run with that.
Well, I saw a meme talking about that, like how Asians did not start the virus, black people are not. It went also that, and I had to type in, and white people are not racist. And then the comment got deleted, and the whole post got deleted. But like, because you're pushing back on the narrative of like, yes, all these people are not what their stereotypes are, but then you leave out white people. Like that's offensive,
Right.
and I'm not white.
Well, and then again, the meme that cracks me up the most, and obviously, in case you haven't noticed, all three of us are Hispanic. But it's
Sorry.
like all Black lives matter, all Latino lives matter. Now it's all Asian lives matter. Okay, so why can't we just say that all lives matter and just be done with it?
Because it
doesn't fit the narrative.
It doesn't fit the narrative.
Right.
And
It's the demonization of European descendant Caucasians.
And they love it. They want to cause class warfare. They want to. It's almost like the media wants a race war. Like that's what they
Right.
want. They're doing a self-fulfilled prophecy of a race war, and that's what they want. And we're here to say no. None of us want that. I have plenty of friends that are of all the spectrums of the color of the rainbow.
Right.
And yet you have these people that you talk to from the north and even the west coast. They're like, well, you have white friends, or you have. It's just they feel they. They're
even going into this about spring break, saying that there's destinations for African American students to go on spring break, and then there's destinations for for Caucasians to go to spring break.
Well, and teasing a little bit on one of our upcoming topics is the fact that there's even black leaders in the community down in Miami that are trying to say that somehow this curfew is racist. It's like the curfew applies to everybody. How is it racist? How is it racist in a predominantly Hispanic county and city? I mean, especially when the elected officials are all Hispanic.
Even in Miami Beach, there
it's a little bit more diverse.
That is definitely European.
Yeah.
They take euros in half of South Beach. But I will say this: they are always looking for something to be racist. That's why we can't have nice things. We can't have Dr. Seuss. We can't have all these other conversations that something Dumbo. We can't have Dumbo. We can't have a lot of things. Oh yeah, Pepe Le Pew.
Right.
But I'll say this: all of that's racist. But then asking for a driver's license is racist as well.
Right.
When you're voting, I have to show a license to get on a plane, to buy alcohol, to do all this other stuff, to get a mortgage. But I don't need one to vote. And if I request that everyone does it, then I'm being racist.
That goes into something I think I mentioned last week. In the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, where I was born, to vote in Commonwealth elections in Puerto Rico, just having a driver's license is not enough. You have to have what's called a state electoral commission card, which is a separate ID. It's a yellow and white card with black text, and it says who you are, what's your address, what's your voting precinct, and where you vote. And I think that if we as Republicans are serious about securing elections, why don't we copy an example of a place that is highly controversial right now with the statehood matter, because apparently they're doing things better. I mean, they're still trying to resolve 1 or 2 elections, but they don't keep on beating the drum in the Puerto Rican media.
White liberals will say that what you just said was racist. White liberals are by far some of the most racist people I know.
Meanwhile, in Africa, Nelson Mandela actively campaigned for voter ID. You know what I mean? And there's a very famous picture, of him wearing a T-shirt advocating for voter IDs in African elections.
Even the coronavirus, people logging in, I think it was the Biden administration that said that it would disproportionately harm black and brown people because they don't know how to get on a computer and register for an appointment for a corona vaccine.
And that's why we should still have paper.
Again, I think they look for racism in everything, and if you're looking for racism in everything, you're going to find it some way. And you know what? Let it happen, because they will eat their own. You're already watching cancel culture happen
Eventually it becomes
to
a boy who
themselves.
cried wolf. I mean, eventually it becomes the thing that when everything is racist, nothing is racist.
And I agree what you're saying, but allowing that to occur in the population is what results in a Nuremberg situation or happens or a genocide situation. You keep on calling that and you don't point it out. As Republicans, we have to point out that what they're doing themselves is racist. What they're doing themselves as Democrats is racist. If you agree with the current immigration policy, then you are perfectly fine with allowing you're allowing children to be trafficked and you're allowing for the sex trade. You're allowing for all that because you're unwilling to secure the border. Honestly, I think it was like 40% of the kids that are crossing the border do not have any connections with the adults that they're walking over with. And people are, oh, that's not true. Yes, you haven't been there. You have no idea what's happening on the border.
And it's documented. I mean, it's documented.
It's documented, and they don't care. They don't care. So when someone in the United States goes to prison, do we let their kids go to prison also?
Right.
No, we separate the kids to the parents. Yeah. This is just a mind-boggling conversation.
Well, and now that Biden's in power, now you don't see AOC at these detention centers for the photo op, right? It's now that the people are literally pouring out of these facilities because there's just not enough room for them. And again, you're going to have we're calling it a crisis. I think it's going to be much worse than that over the next few weeks.
It takes about 2 or 3 weeks for it to as it ramps up now for it to ramp down. It's going to take a month for it to ramp down. Yeah. So the fact that they're getting 100,000 people trying to cross the border in a week, I think it's crazy right now what's happening. Also, that allowing that to happen is a brain drain to the rest of South and Central America. Yes. If you want those countries to figure themselves out,
it's also giving in to this very corrupt political culture in Central America. I remember reading, and I forgot what the source was, but there was a politician, I think in Honduras, who was basically telling these people that he was campaigning at a campaign stop, if you want to improve your life, go north.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's Honduras.
Remember, it wasn't that long ago. I believe it was during the Obama administration, where the Mexican government literally had pamphlets that they were handing out on how to cross the border.
It was Democrats. It was Democratic aides that were providing the literature to be handed out in Mexico for them to be able to cross. It was like the beginning of the Trump administration that they were trying to, at the end, because a huge surge happened at the end of the Obama administration. And you saw that Trump had to, again, just because you hate Trump doesn't mean you have to hate all of his policies. The fact that you can't even say that Trump had some good policies, you think it was easy to do warp speed for us to have the vaccine in less than a year when it usually takes 10 years to get it done? Please, it's just they're unwilling to even give any credit to the man whatsoever because it's Orange Man bad.
Orange Man bad, that's all it's all about.
Yeah, well, speaking of which, we got a little bit of time. So let's go ahead and bring up. I know we started on time. We're running early on topics.
My scarf is looking legit.
I'm almost afraid to go outside. I'm wondering what's going to happen next.
The Russians.
The Russians. That's right.
Red Dawn.
Yeah. Biden's going to have the FBI out there waiting for us. Thank you again to everybody for watching The Yard Sign. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Also, the audio version of our podcast is also a great way to keep in touch with the show. You can find it over at the Tech Overlords at Google, Apple, Amazon, Audible, and Spotify. There we go. All right, got them all that time. Speaking of Trump, news coming out today, and I believe Jason Miller, who was a senior advisor to President Trump, saying that he's actually looking at potentially launching his own social media platform. Now, as taking off my political hat and putting on my digital marketing hat, okay, having been in digital for 14 years, I don't think it'll succeed. I think there'd be a lot of money invested, a lot of early interest.
The question here is who runs the servers?
Well, and the other thing is the execution. How well is it going to be designed? And again, don't get me wrong. Obviously, close to half the country is probably going to be interested in joining it or checking it out at least in some form or fashion. But to be honest, we tend to not do these things very well.
I agree with you that we as Republicans do not do things like
I mean,
this very well.
It took a Brit to make Fox News.
However,
Okay,
I wouldn't be surprised if Trump figures it out. Don't get me wrong. I'm not even allowed to have more than one social platform at a time, so I won't be getting it whatsoever because the wife doesn't let me. However, I wouldn't be surprised if it does succeed.
No, but think about it. No, but
75
there's no
million people.
track record there is no track record there to show that this has any because look, let's be honest, okay? And I know I'm probably going to get some hate for this.
Yes, let's be honest.
Okay. Trump has only done one thing well, and that's promote Trump. That's put his name on buildings, okay?
Aircraft, boats.
Okay, airline failed.
Casinos.
The steak company failed. The casinos failed.
The university.
And really, which didn't even have his name, but the TV show was maybe the second most successful
All
thing
of those
he's done.
were just, a lot of those is just his name.
Yeah.
The underlying business is not him, which I understand where you're going
I'm
for.
just saying, there's no proof that
Now,
of any other
but that's the thing.
of their business
So,
model that he's been successful
If
at.
the name of the social media is not
And I'm just saying
Trump.com,
business.
Trump.com,
I'm not talking
I think
politics.
it'll succeed. I think it'll succeed if it's not Trump.com or TrumpTweet.com, like something like that. If it's not like that, I think people are ready for something else when it comes to another form of Twitter. Parler was okay, and I think if Trump were to take over Parler, I think that might be something interesting because they're saying it'll be out in the next month or two. You can't create an entire system in 2 months. So either they're acquiring something or they've been building something for a while.
Again, so going back to Parler, actually, which you just brought up, Parler is a perfect example of Republicans not being great at this digital stuff
Because
okay?
they didn't take into account that it was Amazon Web Services.
Not
that
even
was
that.
running.
That's technical.
That's the nail that killed it. Now, if Trump wants to open up a farm, a server farm, I'll invest in that in a heartbeat.
And I think he'd have to do that first of
Yeah.
all.
It would have to be his own servers.
Right? And there's Republican leaning companies out there that do that type of work. But the other is again, Parler was a subpar kind of platform.
I heard it was very clunky.
It's just not. It's clunky. It was kind of hard to figure out. Didn't look great. It wasn't very intuitive. I mean, if you spent enough time on it, you could eventually figure it out.
I'm surprised.
But it certainly didn't draw me in enough. For instance, like Clubhouse. Clubhouse is blowing up.
I don't know what Clubhouse is because I
check this
am
out.
not an Apple
Johnny
server.
Torres
So I am an
is
Android
cooler than
supporter.
Joe Rogan
Brock.
in that aspect because Joe Rogan fought a little bit with my favorite comedian right now, Tim Dillon, as to getting on Clubhouse.
Tim Dillon is hilarious.
Because Tim Dillon is blowing up Clubhouse in his crazy semi-conspiratorial way, and he tried to get Joe Rogan to go on Clubhouse, and Joe Rogan's like, I don't want to, man. And
why does Joe Rogan need to do Clubhouse? He's worth $100 million.
Well, and also Joe Rogan doesn't like the back and forth.
Yes.
Like unless he's interviewing somebody, right? He doesn't like the back. Like if he does, or when he does post on Twitter, which is very rare. He doesn't. He said before he doesn't read responses. He doesn't check timeline. He'll post something and just walk away. Same with Instagram. The stuff he posts on his Instagram also very personal, not political.
Him working out in the gym.
Not, he doesn't engage in the comments. So I don't. Clubhouse is definitely not a platform for Joe Rogan, but I do see it being a great platform for a lot of people, and I love it. I'm enjoying it. You know what I mean? It's weird because you have to make time for it, because it's so in the moment.
It's just audio.
Yeah, you can't like go back to it like Twitter or Facebook. You can't just check it later because it won't be there later.
It doesn't exist until it's on Android. I will say this:
Instagram would disagree with you.
I'm not on Instagram either.
But my point is like Instagram started as an iPhone only platform,
and now it's Android, and everyone's on it.
Well, yeah, but it blew up before it crossed over to Android.
I would beg to differ.
Did it blow up after Facebook acquired it or before?
It blew up before. I will say this:
that's why they got, I think, a couple billion.
Now, speaking of Facebook,
wait. The comment section is going pretty well, actually. Robin Adair says that it's going to be great and huge, and she says it should be considered the TNN, the Trump News Network. So I'm loving this one. Kimberly is saying that it's going to be a pretty big deal. So people are excited.
It's going to be great. It's going to be huge.
Kimberly is saying Trump by Trump.
luxurious.
Perfect,
That'd be
luxurious.
amazing.
Millions of people are going to
Amazing.
join it.
The first day.
First day.
But a serious question though is
He actually said that already, by the way.
Did he officially say that he's going to do it?
No, but it was something like if he did, you
Yeah.
know, like he was like, you know, millions of people are going to join it.
Millions of
And
people
it's
will
gonna be-
join it.
They
It'll
will.
crash.
I mean,
And then a week
74
later-
million people voted for Trump, you
Yeah.
know. So, but my serious question about this is, what kind of interference would big tech run on such a thing occurring? What would they? Let's say they
easy.
let him
I mean,
run,
yeah.
but
They wouldn't
shut
put.
it
They
down.
wouldn't let it
No,
on
they-
their what's it called?
On their
Store.
app
They wouldn't let it on
store,
the
right.
app store.
Yeah, that's
so
the big-
it
that's
would
the
be. It
biggest
would have to
way.
be a web-based communication platform because it wouldn't
Yeah.
be allowed
So
to be an app.
so it kind of sounds like MySpace, you know, back in the day. When MySpace,
Well, yeah, it would just be
didn't
like,
have
you know,
an app.
well, yeah, because the problem is that
Which is still
like,
around.
For instance, be it Android or Apple, right? So Google or Apple could say, not only are we not going to list this app on our store, but we're also not going to allow it to install on our devices. You know, and so at that point, then what do you do? I mean, because if you're relegated to a desktop only platform, I mean, I find that really hard to scale
But wouldn't
up.
that cause an antitrust and a monopoly conversation that's
Yeah,
going
it
to play?
could.
You could
Absolutely.
easily. I mean, and Trump would. He has the money to.
But I
sue.
mean, they're going to claim, right, that this is going to be a breeding ground for, you know, hateful speech and hate groups and, you know, racism.
But then you
and-
throw it back at them and say there was more of that on the Facebook and Twitter platforms than there was on Parler. But yeah,
Yeah.
we needed a scapegoat when it came to what happened on January 6th. Again, I think what's going to occur, I think people are getting very smart to the idea that the tech overlords, as you call them, I enjoy my social media, so I'm not going to say that. They're going to start overreaching. I say I'm waiting for someone, I wouldn't be surprised if it's AOC, that calls on to break them up. It's going to be whoever wants to
That-
become the next Democratic president.
That's
after
already
co-
kind of
after
happening
some-
in the Florida state legislature,
Yeah.
where they are introducing bills to combat this, pushing this progressive left-wing narrative by big tech. There is already a bill in the Florida State House that is seeking to combat the.
And Facebook
combat
lost.
trend.
They went against. They took off the news articles in
Australia.
Australia, and they lost that fight. So
Yeah.
that was very interesting. So the government's gonna have to show that they are bigger. And I don't like getting government involved in things like this, but it's become a point to where it's just too big. What's happening in Amazon when it comes to unionization in Alabama, it's very interesting to see what's happening there. And it's going to happen. I don't like unionization. I think it's ridiculous. However, when it comes to those people that are working in those factories, I would suggest that they should unionize. Amazon is making way too much money, and it's time for them
And
to unionize.
surprisingly enough, what major political figure in the Republican Party is supporting this push up in Bessemer, Alabama, to unionize? Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's one of
You're
these.
never going to become president. You are too short. I love Marco Rubio, but he's not going to become president. He's just. It doesn't happen. I don't want to sound biased. I love him to death. I'm probably going to shoot myself in the foot.
But
by
I think
calling it
this
out.
was Marco's way to push back against Amazon. You know, with everything Amazon has been doing to Republicans, you know,
Yeah.
and pushing back and say, oh well, you know, you've been alienating us. You've been pushing us to the side. Well, don't look to our support. You know, when it comes to being anti-unionization.
To combating
You know,
unionization
because
in your-
well, yeah, if you're going to pick
warehouses.
sides, well, good luck with the Democrats.
And
on
they've
this
shown
one.
it. They've shown how much the tech overlords have already shown what side they're on.
Yeah.
And so because of that, F it. Bring it on. Unionize all of it. I don't care what. It doesn't matter anymore. If they're going to go against us and not give us money for the elections, might as well do it. I'm perfectly fine with it. And I'm so looking forward to 2022 just to see how it all falls apart for the Democrats.
Well, one of the things that I think we also need to be paying attention to is to what Congressman Gus Bilirakis said on our show last week, which is that they are going to reopen and start discussing Section 230 again, which
Yeah.
would be huge because, again, moving these platforms or moving these tech companies from platforms to publishers puts them under a whole new set of rules that I think is going to help. It's just going to squash some of these issues right out of the gate. And look, Amazon, in regards to unionization, has kind of dug its own hole. I mean, my mom worked for Amazon here locally for a season, and look, obviously, working standards have greatly improved, right, over the
Yeah.
past 50, 60 years. But they do work their employees really hard.
Yes.
And you could even say that
It's a
they made
24-hour operation.
Yeah, well, and for someone like my mom, who's in her 60s, right, they do create an environment that is almost set up those individuals who are older for failure because they can't keep up with the demands that they're continually given in terms of work quotas. And so there are some issues there that Amazon's going to have to work out. And if it has to be through unionization, so be it. But again, I think like government, there's a role for everything.
Yeah.
Now is the union's role today what it was 50 years ago? No,
No.
of course not. But I do think that there needs to be some checks and balances. And if Amazon's not willing to do it themselves, then that's when a union needs to step in and say, hey, look, you guys need to sort this out because this is not a
humane working environment.
Exactly.
But
Thank
the
you.
only way for that to ever be released is for Republicans and Democrats to get on the same side in regards to being in the same position. If the employees want to be unionized, then they should be allowed to be unionized.
I mean, it's freedom of assembly.
Yeah,
Think
and
about it.
again, the Constitution allows it protection for those things. I think a lot of Democrats are very surprised that we believe that if a unionization needs to occur, then it should occur. I think they're just so shocked that Republicans are not pro-business all the time.
Right.
We're still pro-business. I also think that it needs to be more humane.
Pro-fair business.
Yeah, pro-business, not corporate
You're
greed.
not seeing the Republican Party support what Foxconn is doing on Apple's behalf in China, where they're working their workers to the point where they're having to put
Suicide nets.
on the from the second floor on up on their windows to prevent because it's basically slave labor. Even worse for the Uyghurs that are out in northwestern China working in these factories.
Well, those are slave camps. I mean,
But,
those are-
but no one is ever going to make a change until the individual is making the decision not to buy Apple products that are made in China and probably in factories. That
Oh,
are,
because Androids aren't?
who said that? I didn't say, did I say that? I didn't say that. What I'm saying is it'll never change until it stops. That's why you have the NBA willing to hush people and fire people when they start talking about Hong Kong. And this will happen in other places.
Oh, LeBron loves to get real vocal about politics until you bring up China.
Oh my God.
absolutely.
He's a douche.
All right. Well, on that note, by the way, I think Trump can't help himself. He'll definitely put his name on whatever platform he comes up with.
I don't think so. I don't think it'll be the
It'll
Trump.
be called TrumpNet.
It will
Trump
not.
net.
I don't.
TrumpNet.
I
Gold
hope.
background,
I,
Trump font in black.
Roman serif letters.
Exactly.
I pray. I am predicting that there is no. That does not. Oh, maybe there's no
I
Trump.
think you're starting something.
I know. Maybe we're starting something here. Okay. We brought this on just to see if it works. So I'm predicting it doesn't have Trump's name on it. If it does, it won't work. But if it doesn't, I think it might work.
I think they should call it something like Red Wave or,
that's too political.
By the way, if he doesn't put this together before the midterms, it's completely pointless.
yeah.
Oh, that's the only power he will get is those districts.
He has to pull this off before midterm elections.
They say 3 months.
or it's pointless. Then it's been in the works for a while.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's either acquiring something or it's been in the works for a while. They haven't said anything. And I'm very surprised that no one has said anything on that.
It's probably going to be Parler.
Yeah, I
It's
wouldn't be
probably,
surprised. A relaunch of Parler.
I mean,
Yeah,
the infrastructure's already there.
It's
Why not?
shitty infrastructure.
Well, and it's all Trump people, Bongino, and it's all people that are have
Bongino
already
basically
been loyal
took
to Trump.
Russia's spot.
What do you mean? What?
Dan Bongino is now taking Rush Limbaugh's spot on his.
Oh, Rush Limbaugh. I thought you
Yeah.
said
said
Russia.
Rush.
I thought you said
No,
Russia.
I said
I'm like,
Russia's spot.
Oh.
Not the
Russia's
spot of the Russians.
Russia's spot.
Yeah.
Not Russia's spot.
Yeah,
Got it.
exactly.
Okay.
As we get control over this broadcast to figure out what form of communism we're going to pick out of this, my comrades.
Well, that's going to be the interesting thing because Eric Erickson, formerly of Red State, is in the Rush Limbaugh slot on WSB in Atlanta. So it's going to be interesting who kind of really fills that slot eventually down
I
the road.
think it'd
But
probably
I think
be
it's open
Bongino.
season. You know, and it came a lot closer. I'd been saying this for a long time, that now is the kind of the time to break into that medium, you know, to establish, let's say, a radio audience or a media audience, because it was only a matter of time before Rush wasn't around.
Do you see anybody from Fox News being taken into that spot? Because,
No.
No, the transition from television to radio is incredibly difficult. I mean, it's
usually the opposite.
It's almost a very, very different skill set. And to be honest, most of the people on television are just teleprompter readers.
Yeah.
And couldn't run like. People don't
even Tucker?
people politics aside, no, because I think Tucker might be a good one, but politics aside, people truly have no clue how hard it is to do what Rush Limbaugh was doing
for
to
hours,
do 3 hours a day, to talk by yourself predominantly, right? Because he rarely interviewed, and Bo Snerdley, his producer, also rarely spoke on microphone.
Not like Michael Sparkanish, where he has his producer TC talking, hey, how's it going? You know?
Yeah, it was always off air, right, in his ear. People have no clue how hard that is. That's incredibly difficult to be able to fill 3 hours worth of content.
Prepare the material.
And make it engaging content, right? Because again, like, he had a larger radio audience than Howard Stern, and a lot of people don't realize that. Howard Stern became Howard Stern because he branched out into television, he branched out into other things.
Movies.
But Rush Limbaugh, when it came to radio, was dominant, like, by a mile. All right. So anyways, on that note, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. You know, as usual, we ran a little long, but that's okay. We got a lot in today. Don't forget, you can watch all the videos of this and every other episode on Facebook and YouTube. But don't forget to subscribe to the audio version of our podcasts that are giant, enormous, gargantuan, multinational tech overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, and Amazon. Got them all that time. See?
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much to everybody for watching. Everybody in the comment section, we love you all very much. Until next time, this has been The Yard Sign. Good night, everybody.